James Bond. James Bond.
You want to know something? This could have been a fun game. This could have been a fun third-person shooter set in the Terminator universe. But instead, Grin and Evolve Games made one of the worst games I have played this year. It's boring, it's way too short, and has almost no replay value whatsoever. Now, what exactly makes this game so bad? Well, let's begin with the game's story.
You're idiots! All of you!
One thing remains constant. Whatever we try to do to stop the machines, it's never enough.
In Terminator Salvation, you play as John Connor during the war against the machines. He gets a distress signal from a survivor named David in his resistance team, which makes Connor defy his orders to get to the chopper, and goes off searching for them instead.
Look, if we leave them behind, we're no better than the machines!
Connor, I am ordering you to get on this chopper!
Thus begins John and Blair's journey through Skynet territory, just to save a few more men. Now the story here technically takes place before the movie, so it isn't completely based off of it. Even so, the story fails to keep you interested throughout the entire game, with characters you don't seem to care about in the end. In short, the story here just comes off as dull and boring, which shouldn't be the case since this is a Terminator game. Now then, let's move on to the graphics. Terminator Salvation's graphics are, in a word, mediocre. I'm not saying that they're bad, they're just not that good. A lot of the world textures are poor and lack a lot of variety throughout most of the game, meaning that you will see brown and gray most of the time, with the exploding machines being respectfully colorful. As for the character models, while the machines look like they should, the human models look terrible in comparison. The animations, on the other hand, are a bit mixed with both good and bad points. The machines animate like a machine, obviously, but the animations on the humans are pretty poor, especially during the cutscenes. One good thing about the human animations, however, is how they move from cover to cover. It actually looks really good and makes the transitions between cover look dynamic. Another good thing is that the game runs at a pretty good frame rate most of the time, with a few instances of some noticeable slowdown. All in all, the graphics aren't great, but they're bearable enough to at least look at. Now then, let's move on ahead and look at the game's sound. The overall sound design is a huge mixed bag in my opinion. The sound effects from explosions and such sound decent, but when it comes to the weapons, they don't sound like they should. With the exception of the shotgun and explosive weapons, the human machine guns sound like they are shooting weak BB gun bullets, including the heavy machine gun. As for the voice acting, it's unfortunately piss poor. With the exception of Christian Bale, the voices of Blair and Barnes reprise their roles from the movie, but sadly, their delivery is just bad.
They're robots, right? What else should I call them?
Fine, no problem.
However, the voice of John Connor is the worst here. I mean, just listen to how emotional Connor gets when he loses contact with David.
Come in. Can you hear me? David. Damn it!
Yeah, greatest acting ever. The music, however, is actually pretty good, with some pretty good battle music and a decent usage of the Terminator theme. It's just sad to see that music like this went to waste on this game. But because of the mixed weapon sounds, poor voice acting, and a good soundtrack, the overall sound design is just a mixed up mess of good and bad. Now then, what about Salvation's gameplay?
Come on, John! This is our chance!
The gameplay is where Terminator Salvation falls flat on its face. I haven't played a more boring game than this in a very long time. I just want to get the few good things out of the way first. Now then, The cover system is not that bad actually. It may not be as extremely simple as like in Gears of War or something similar to that, but it gets the basics right. Actions such as moving from cover to cover, blind firing, and aiming out of cover are handled pretty well. And the aiming is thankfully smooth at default, including the option to change sensitivity in case you don't like the default setting. Sadly, those are the only good things about the gameplay in Salvation. Everything else just goes downhill from here. First of all, there is a huge lack of enemy variety in this game. Most of the time, you will be fighting T-70 spiders, aerostat wasps, and T-600s over and over and over again, with one instance where you fight a hunter-killer. It gets so repetitive so fast, you will become bored very quickly. I know there aren't a lot of different types of machines in the Terminator universe, but doing the same thing over and over like the way this game handled it just makes the game a snore fest. There are times where the game tries to add variety with on-rail segments, but they still aren't that fun to play. The one fun part, however, is where you get to pilot a harvester while smashing your way through Skynet, and I've gotta admit, that was pretty cool. As for the controls, they're good, but some stupid choices were made. For example, selecting between grenades and pipe bombs can be a pain in the ass since you use the weapon select button to switch. If the D-pad was used to switch grenades, it would have been better since the D-pad is never used. One more thing, every time you die, you have to sit through a painfully slow loading screen. I understand when it loads between levels, but the game shouldn't take 15 to 20 seconds to load after dying. Now, I only played the PS3 version of this game, so I don't know what the load times are like on the 360 version, and I never want to know. But what really kills this game is the huge lack of any replay value. There is no multiplayer whatsoever, which should have been in this game, because I can see how multiplayer could work with this game. The only multiplayer-esque mode is co-op, but it's restricted to split screen only, which I can't show you since I don't have a second PS3 controller. The worst thing, however, is the game's length. For most people, this game will take 3 to 4 hours to complete. Yes, 3 to 4 hours! This game is so short, it's almost criminal, especially when given no multiplayer at all. Come on, Grin, couldn't you put a little effort into this game? No wonder your studio closed down, despite me liking Bionic Commando and Wanted. In the end, if there was more replay value and more variety, this game could have been fun. But sadly, it ends up becoming a complete mess of a game. Now that's all done and over with, let's move on to the final scores. Story gets a 4 out of 10 for having an uninteresting plot, despite taking place before the movie, with boring and unlikable characters that you won't care about at the end of the day. Graphics get a 5 out of 10 for bland textures and colors, mixed character model designs and animations, and is really just a mediocre looking package. Sound gets a 5 out of 10 for weak sound effects, bad voice acting, but gets saved a little bit by a good soundtrack. And gameplay gets a 2 out of 10 for repetitive action, no multiplayer, and no replay value to speak of. And sadly, that killed the game big time for me. Overall, for $60, this game isn't worth your time or money. It isn't even worth a rental. In short, avoid this game at all costs and find a better game to play that isn't this pile of garbage. So, I give Terminator Salvation a 2 out of 10.
Remember me?